Well, hi, friends. Back on the same day here, which is the 24th of July, 2017. And this time I did press my chronometer. So maybe we'll have something more like a program that's on the hour or every 2 hours. We'll see how it goes. The subject is a difficult one. He's chosen this to discuss the second initiation, which has so much to do with conquering the Martian tendencies, the selfish tendencies of the astral body. And he's chosen that particular discussion in order to enlarge upon the way the Russian tendency to inhibit freedom was flourishing 70 years ago, in the late 40s, when Stalin was making his moves to accentuate the dominating Leonian nature of Russia, and I suppose of the USSR. And he's going into Zionism as well, which from many perspectives has not received the same type of criticism, though now it has. And whether the Zionistic movement is quite as strong now as it once was, or whether the more enlightened Israelis are at last taking a stand against what the Tibetan describes as the license to take what you want simply because you want it, even if it belongs to someone else. Well, whether there's a stand against that, there is some stand. It does remain to be seen. There's always going to be contradicting points of view, and what we do see is that Israel is a democracy, and sometimes a very well, I almost said noisy. It's not really noisy. It's what is the word? It's energetic, and it has lots of friction, and there are many different points of view being advanced, all the way from the most conservative to those which are much more liberal and inclusive. The fourth ray nature of the Jewish people, fourth ray in some respect, is it the monadic ray? Is alive and well. Contentious, maybe that's one of the words I want, the contentious nature of the exchange of opinions, swinging to the right, swinging to the left, and vocal, very vocal in advancing the points of view of the different constituencies. So anyway, DK goes on with this, and perhaps after the Great War, and given that the United States supported the Zionistic movement, this type of statement, the kind of statements he's making here, would not be very popular among many readers. But let's see here. The leaders of the Zionist movement of aggression, he minces no words. And, among the Jewish readers of the Tibetan, they have naturally imagined that this part was written by Alice Bailey. Same for homosexuality and the Christian church and all that. They imagine the Tibetan is not responsible for that type of writing, but we have been told by him and assured by Alice Bailey that if she refused to take down what he said, he would dispense with her as an amanuensis. So things are really the reverse of what many people think. A nice second-ray master, he can't say things like this, right? But of course, he has a lot of first ray in his nature, especially he tells us in his triadal nature. and that these factors make it possible for him to have many first-ray types under training in his ashram and in his groups. So, there is a toughness to the Tibetan, and it gives him some kind of real standing and grit. There is a type of will in the second ray, when reinforced by the first, which just does not let up and gives no leeway. And he began his work by telling us how completely honest he would be in all of his assessment of his students. Now, the interesting thing is apparently that Alice Bailey moderated his honesty to some extent, or at least asked him to express certain things in less direct ways. So this is exactly the opposite of what many people think. Anyway, the leaders of the Zionist movement of aggression constitute a real danger to world peace and human development, and their activities have been endorsed by the expediency policy of the USA and in a secondary degree by Great Britain under the influence of the USA. And, will Israel be the source of war? I mean, there have been a number of wars fought, but or is it through the almost inevitable uprising of the warlike nature, as there is an aspect of Islam that is warlike, the warlike nature of Islam, a religion which, like Christianity and like the old Judaism, is very much under the Martian influence. And I would say under the lunar influence. In the flag of Islam, of course, the moon is always appearing. So these three religions are said to be passé at this time. The Tibetan says they have outworn their usefulness. Something good can come out of the best principles of them, but they must fade away and will with the age of Aquarius dawning and a more scientific spirit emerging. They will fade away, having made their contribution to humanity's process and the best that they offer being absorbed, I think, by the New World religion. It is the Zionists who have defied the United Nations, lowered its prestige, and made its position both negative and negligible to the world. These are very strong words. It's a really, the ancient sin of going backwards. When Moses came down from the mountain, Moses representing Aries in a way, he found his group worshiping the golden calf, reverting to the age of Taurus, which with the precession of the equinoxes precedes the age of Aries. And we have here a backward movement, perhaps, still retaining now the age of Aries instead of moving into Pisces and Aquarius. Oh, there are movements among the Jews which recognize who the Master Jesus really is, and there's this group called Jews for Jesus. Well, I mean, it's a very direct kind of statement, but it shows the emergence of some of the Jewish people into the age of Pisces. Now, others are emerging into the age of Aquarius. I don't think we will have an ongoing retrogression, but certainly the Zionistic attack, which reflected in a way the taking of the promised land long ago under Joshua and under Moses from the true inhabitants of that land, as if God had promised it to the Hebrew tribes. Well, you can make God the sponsor of anything you want, anything the personality wants. It's just too bad that people don't see into the tendencies of the personality and how those tendencies can masquerade as the voice of God. Unless we really are dealing with the lunar deity that in the secret doctrine we call Jehovah, and who is a very minor deity with not especially humanistic tendencies. So it is the Zionists who have perpetrated the major act of aggression since the formation of the United Nations. Of course, there have been, divisions and takeovers by Russia of the Baltic states and other countries which they were allocated, I suppose, in the Yalta Agreement, and who were clever enough, there's the third ray at work, to gain the endorsement of the United Nations, turning the original recommendation into an order. So this we have maybe often read. The third ray personality of the Jewish group can certainly be intelligent in a material and selfish way. Of course, the intelligence extends far beyond that and has made tremendous contributions to humanity. We cannot overlook that. There are in the Jewish group those who are members of what DK calls the aristocracy of humanity. The rule of force, of aggression, and of territorial conquest by force of arms is demonstrated today by the Zionists in Palestine, however they may have disguised it, as well as the demonstration of the power of money to purchase government. So it's a combination of their two rays. The Jews have two rays, which the Zionists use. First ray, soul, appropriated by the personality, and the ray 3, or let's just call it third ray personality. There's the power of money. There's the cleverness. There's the manipulativeness. There's the maneuvering, which has led to the retaking of a land which has not been in Jewish possession for 2,000 years or so. These activities run counter to all the plans of the spiritual hierarchy and mark a point of triumph for the forces of evil. I suppose, there was such sympathy for the dedicated slaughter of many, many Jews, but many of other groups as well, but still the slaughter, the annihilation of the Jews was what was emphasized, especially in the English-speaking countries. I'm emphasizing the activities of these two countries because through the leaders of these groups of aggressive men, the forces of evil, dammed back temporarily by the defeat of the evil group which Hitler gathered round him, have once again organized their attack on the spiritual development of humanity. These are very strong words, and as I've said, many have taken exception to these words and felt the Tibetan didn't understand or had no business writing them, or in fact, that he didn't write them at all. This is, again, when people don't like what's in the Alice Bailey books, it's Alice Bailey who did the writing and not the Tibetan, which is really incredibly illogical position. So, opening the door again, the aggressive Zionists, using that first ray in a personality sense, and coming forward and taking the place, in a way, strangely, ironically, of Hitler and his evil group, inverting the Shambhala force, which itself was so against the Jews. And here the Zionists are copying their methods. Probably they also knew of the presence of natural resources in the area, and probably certain interests in the United States which wanted access to those resources saw an opportunity for a foothold in the area. The power of human selfishness is still unfortunately very strong, and those of us who are struggling to overcome it in ourselves and promote its overcoming in humanity just have to stand amazed. Of course, maybe we're looking at how we were not so very long ago, and it looks like how can such a thing be? But still, the development of humanity is what it is, and people are at all different stages in the unfoldment of their egoic lotus, and there are all kinds of different ray abuses. And when you put the first and third rays together without the second ray, you have the potential for very great power plays conducted through devious manipulation. The world today still remains divided into people of evil intention and great power and their victims. And you might want to say, you know, and even after the Great War of 1914 to 1945, you know, there was an interim there, but it just went underground, basically. So men of evil intention. After all, in a sense, humanity is Lucifer. That's what DK tells us. Lucifer has a good reputation when it's related to the solar angels, but its normal reputation has to do with pride and with evil. So we have to understand the context in which we are discussing that term. So people of evil intention and their victims, plus the negative reactions of the remaining nations who don't want trouble and who don't want to get involved. They have had enough with the war. There is no nation in the United Nations which has attempted to swing the tide of evil by ranging itself and other nations on the side of freedom, and this is an amazing condemnation. No nation. Probably due to sentimentality, misplaced compassion, naivete, the inability to see the forces who were really behind this takeover, and certainly, of course, this takeover has been the source of the generation of great hatred in the world. There's tremendous hatred again, you know. DK at one point said, look, World War II maybe was not so bad as World War I because the hatred generated was not as great. But of course, the hatred of the enemy. But in Germany, the hatred was very great, and in the Axis powers. There are only groups of unillumined men who seek to control national destinies. So this is the assessment of the status of the leaders of many nations who did not act with bravery. There is still emotional reaction to situations and emotional exploitation of individuals and nations by those who are in no way emotional, but who are mentally convinced that certain lines of activity must be followed, leading to their own individual good, but which in the long run are not good for the peoples involved. So, you know, people of strong mentality exist. Selfish but strong mentality exists. It's hard to face up to that fact when we look at what the wonderful possibilities are. We wonder how it is that so many human beings can be ignorant of these things, but again, the development of humanity is what it is, and so much of an uplifting and illuminating nature is not reaching many, many people, and if it did reach them, they would pay no attention to it because they have not, what do I want to say, suffered enough from the consequences of their selfish motivations and actions. So this is why he's talking about this here in the section about the second initiation, when a major aspect of selfishness, maybe not all, is overcome. Mars, a non-sacred planet, and its influence is emotionally overcome at the second degree. Of course, some of those who manipulate and who sway the emotional masses may be those who have taken the second initiation but are veering off onto the left-hand path because they cannot make the relinquishments required in the desert, as the Master Jesus and the Christ demonstrated for us. We therefore come back to the problem of the astral plane, of the emotional level of consciousness, and to the second initiation. So, DK always has a reason for writing what he writes, where he writes it, even if we don't see the immediate connection. This initiation releases men from emotional control and enables them to shift their consciousness onto mental levels. And from that higher point of focus, control their normal and well-developed emotional attitude. So, second initiation is an initiation of control. Well, maybe they all are in a way, with different aspects of the elemental nature being controlled by the higher aspects. Maybe all initiations involve control of lower aspects of the nature by higher. Okay. So 340, that's an important page, That's the one that gives us the initiations and certain rays connected with them. 340. Yes, there they are. And it has been pointed out, by the way, with respect to this, it's not sex magic, it's sex and magic. This is an unfortunate juxtaposition which make us think that somehow sex magic is involved with the first initiation, and it's very much not the case. I'm grateful for the individual that pointed that out to me. It made so much sense. I always had pondered about that. So if you will turn back to page 340, you will find that the three keynotes are given for this second initiation and for its technique. I would like to call your attention to them because they present those keynotes which give us the clue to the world problems and indicate at the same time the solution and the way out of the present impasse. So much of these world problems being caused by emotional reaction. And these three words are dedication, glamour, and devotion. And here is the explanation of the process. It is the dedication of the aspirant which invokes the fire. You have here a statement of major importance. So, when we truly are focused on a particular objective and become aspirationally, passionately devoted to its realization, a type of fire is called forth. So this is a statement of major importance. The aspirant upon the higher levels of the astral plane, where there is, emotional idealism and, well, let's see, what all do we find there? We find emotional idealism, we find imagination. Those are the two higher levels of this plane, subplanes, that are the highest. So is swept by the fire of dedication. It's a six-ray type of orientation. This immediately focuses his will as it demonstrates on the mental plane, and this focusing in due time starts the serious undertaking of the shifting of his consciousness onto mental levels. Dedication does have that mental component. We remember the results of the second initiation have a mental type of development indicated. Spiritual intelligence, mental illumination, the throat center is stimulated. So the fire of dedication, which is an insular fire, we might say, it rejects many things, but it focuses on the achieving, willful achieving of a certain objective. This fire is called in and then becomes part of the energy condition of the individual. Then immediately the fireworks, and the first reaction, as I've earlier pointed out, is the meeting of fire and water, and consequently the production of fog, mist, glamour, and illusion. He does mention the mental component, which is illusion. And let's just say that those imaginings and those mistakes, which are the natural inhabitants of the astral plane, are strengthened. Fire and water, and a person becomes very dedicated, but to glamours and illusions. The Nazis were very much so. The individual becomes very dedicated to glamours and illusions. Thus, it is with certain fundamentalistic religions also. Fundamentalistic, is there such a word? Well, let's say there is now. All of these four words must be understood symbolically. It's not literal fog, it's not literal mist, although I suppose on the astral plane there would be conditions that suggest the fog and the mist, the inability to think clearly because of the presence of water droplets, we might say, with their distorting effect upon a true image. So all of these four words must be understood symbolically. The glamours thus induced are dependent upon the ray and the point of evolution of the individual and nation. So not only the personality ray, but also the ray of the soul appropriated by the personality. It is essential that you learn to think in the widest possible terms. With these glamours, he dealt with them early. I shall not deal. Individuals are rapidly discovering the nature of their glamours once their spiritual intention is determined. So we all have distorted perspectives, and they must be revealed to us. So the status of the individual determines the intensity of the glamour. Also, national glamour is well recognized by onlookers, though seldom yet by the nations involved. So being an onlooker gives one some objectivity. There's so much, let's say in America, godmother and apple pie, you know. So many of we're the greatest nation on earth, and the land of the free and the home of the brave, and American exceptionalism and all the rest of it. Other nationals and other nations see things a little more objectively. They see our tremendous religious and race problems, our problems with gun culture, with the violence, the immaturity, even the egoism of exceptionalism, you might say. The factor which leads to the dissipation of glamour is devotion. That may seem an interesting and enigmatic statement. Devotion to an individual, to a master, is taught by the Theosophical Society or some idealistic project. It is finally unlimited. I would say, let's just say what we see here is devotion is progressive and evolutionary. It is finally an unlimited devotion to the way, to the treading of the path at any cost, and to the unswerving attachment to service as constituting the major technique of the path. So we might say that devotion widens and deepens our perspective, and devotion to lesser things leads to devotion to greater things, given time. And I don't know, devotion has much of the heart in it. There is the devotion of the soul to the progress of its personality, and the monad is called a lord of ceaseless and persevering devotion. And we learn of the devotion of the soul and so forth. It's an aspect of service. It doesn't only mean looking up, it also means looking down to those who can be served. So we might want to say that, that devotion goes both ways. Up and down. Dedication resulting in glamour, which is dissipated by devotion. These are the keynotes of the second initiation. And then, of course, when we're in the state of dedication, we think there's nothing better than to be thus dedicated, even though we may be dedicated to our own warped perceptions, which we can call glamours. Forget not that nationalism is the result of dedication to a particular national setup and produces the glamours which lead to world difficulty. Always separatism enters, and a limited, and let's call limited loves, and strenuous rejection of that to which one is not dedicated. But devotion, as I say, brings in more of the heart and makes it possible for a deepening of the attitude and for the end of the reign of separativeness, because the sixth ray gradually under devotion widens out into the all-inclusive second ray. These three aspects of evolutionary unfoldment must be recognized by every aspirant. Their existence determines his place upon the path, the initiation for which he is being prepared, and the nature of his service for humanity. And I guess it takes a long time, long time may be required between the first initiation and this second initiation, during which these problems must be seen and solved. So maybe ask yourself, to what is it that you are devoted? You say, well, I'm no longer devoted. But look, if the soul is devoted, and if the monad is a lord of ceaseless and persevering devotion, then certainly we, as gradually soul-infusing personalities, can find the right kind of devotion within ourselves. I suspect that is the case. And what will be the result of the combination in one's life of these three factors? Well, number one, the solar plexus will be brought, first of all, into a condition of almost violent and compelling activity. We will act strenuously according to our attractions and repulsions. This activity is induced by dedication and produces glamour inevitably. So Dedication is very selective and exclusive. And, just think of these two words. Sometimes the difference between them may not be easily seen. But I think, let's say this, there is much more progressive selflessness in devotion when compared to dedication. But sometimes they are mentioned in the same breath. He or she is dedicated and devoted to this or that. But DK is giving us a distinction. And as so many of the students of this type of work are initiates of the first degree, that much, and are moving towards the second, this becomes a very important trio of stages which has to be understood, and our place in relation to it has to be understood. The violent energies, now violent, obviously Mars is involved. The violent energies of the solar plexus center will eventually be controlled by the quality of devotion, and we might say there is devotion in Mars, but still more in Neptune, which rules the solar plexus for disciples. It is this quality which transforms the solar plexus center into a great clearinghouse for all emotional reactions and for all glamours, and makes it temporarily a cause of disaster, of conflict, of pain and distress. Well, that temporary condition may last a number of lives. Let's just say that devotion contributes to the defeat of selfishness much more than dedication does, but dedication is on its way. It's just there is that interim phase when many partial or distorted points of view are excessively energized. So glamours are the excessive energizing of distorted or limited points of view. So let's get that in there because it will be used more than once. Points of view, the plural. Yeah, okay. As a result of both of these, a great transforming agency, remember that transformation is related to the astral body. Transformation to the astral body. Remember that transmutation, especially to the etheric physical, transfiguration, especially to the mind. So a great transforming agency is set in motion by the quality of devotion, which is, at length becomes really selfless. And I think the lower ego is not so defeated under dedication. Under dedication, the lower ego is stronger than under real devotion. And the solar plexus center becomes not only a clearinghouse, but the main factor in lifting both physical and emotional active energies from below the diaphragm to the heart center. So physical energies, etheric, also rise to the heart center. And Mars and Neptune are both good lifters, but Neptune even more. The rootlessness of Neptune contrasts with its power to uplift. This constitutes a long process which the aspirant is forced to face in the interim between initiations. And, do we even know, amidst all the many things we do and pay attention to, that this deeper process is going on? We are told, and it is factually true, that the longest period between initiations is to be found between the first and second initiation. Now, sometimes it can be many lives, or, always more, it seems, than between other initiations. But there's one reference which seems to indicate that, I suppose, if things go very well, the second initiation can be taken in the next life after the first. One reference that I have found, I could go on a hunt for it, but maybe for the moment just accept my word for it. This is a truth which must be faced, but it should also be remembered that it is by no means the hardest period. That is between the first and second. The hardest period for the sensitive feeling aspirant, having already achieved some kind of real sensitivity in the astral body with Venus and Jupiter and Neptune affecting that astral body, the hardest period for the sensitive feeling aspirant is to be found between the second and third initiations. It is a period of intense suffering, of the penalty of applying factors of glamour and illusion, of pronounced involvement in situations which for a long time remain unclarified, and of a steady moving forward as best the beleaguered aspirant can under the influence of right direction, finally, and spiritual determination, because the will is relatively strong after that point. The possibility of under Vulcan of the cultivating of the will comes in after the second degree. Okay, I somehow like to make this a little bigger. So it's a tough period between the first and second. It's a long period, but it's not the hardest or the most painful period. Intense suffering. Well, the solar plexus center really has to be purified increasingly, continuously, as we move towards the temptations in the desert. And glamours have been enacted, applied. Illusion is still not conquered. And one is paying karma by being subjected to situations which are not resolved and are not clear and remain that way. And you just move forward as best you can. So sometimes this he has to do in the dark, working under the action of the logical and understanding mind, which is becoming more powerful, we would say, which as the third initiation is approached, is becoming more powerful, but seldom under the influence of inspiration, and this is of the soul and especially of the Buddhic plane. Nevertheless, the good work goes on, somehow survive this period, and remember, it doesn't necessarily have to be all that long a period, because, as DK enigmatically to some, and when I first read it, I thought, what? The second, third, and fourth initiation all in the same life, and probably so? Huh. I thought, is this real? So maybe not as long a period under ideal conditions. Nevertheless, the good work goes on, the emotions are brought under control, and necessarily the factor of the mind assumes increasingly right importance. So this is what's happening between the second initiation and the third initiation. Light, flickering, and as yet uncertain and unpredictable, pours occasionally from the soul via the mind. And goodness, after, I want that. After the second degree, only occasionally. So this tells us something about the light of the soul and when we can really expect it to be infusing the mind, adding frequently to the complications, but producing eventually the needed control, which will lead to and result in freedom. I would just say, let everybody come to terms with these words in his or her own way. So let all come to terms with the Tibetan's words in his or her own way. You can believe others in what they say. You can take such things into consideration, but don't let another person tell you what is the nature of your interior life or where you stand. It doesn't really work out. You have to see for yourselves. I'm talking to myself as I'm talking to you. Ponder on these things. Freedom is the keynote of the individual who is facing the second initiation and its aftermath. Preparation for the third initiation. Freedom. It is Sirian Law. Sirian Law of freedom. And the influence of Sirius, it seems, becomes more intense as the second initiation is approached and passed, and the third initiation comes into sight. Freedom, liberty, one of the lords of liberation. Liberty, equality, fraternity, the three air signs. Liberty, Aquarius, Uranus. Freedom is the keynote of the world disciple today. And it is freedom to live, freedom to think, freedom to know, to plan, which humanity demands at this time. So hence, will I get to what hence is here? Hence the importance of the four freedoms, enunciated by FD Roosevelt. The initiation, that of the transfiguration, which we are to study, our next to study, is one of the most important of them all. From one particular angle, it is peculiarly related to the fifth initiation of revelation and to the seventh initiation of resurrection. We have this leapfrog, leapfrogging, skipping one and relating every other one. 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, 2, 4, 6, 8, perhaps. There's something resonantly reflected from the higher initiation into the one that precedes it by 2. Well, what do we have here? The fifth and seventh, third, fifth, and seventh, all three are concerned with freedom. Wow. Freedom from the personality, that's the, obviously, third degree. Freedom from blindness, through revelation, of freedom from all the 7 planes of our planetary existence, I suppose, after the 7th initiation. Kind of wonder, it would seem to me that the 7th initiation would fixate you upon the logoic plane, but it might take the 8th initiation of transition really to achieve that ability to come and go on the cosmic astral plane, and thus achieve real freedom from the cosmic physical plane, finally consummated at the refusal of the 9th initiation, which basically says, for the time being, except under sacrifice later, we will not be subject to the cosmic physical plane, nor will we attend to it, as our area of learning is the cosmic astral plane, and maybe even ongoingly to the cosmic mental plane. So there is an important structure revealed here, and what is it, Venus? Venus, Saturn, and maybe Uranus, Vulcan. Venus, in a way, the ruler of the 3rd degree. All those other planets are to be found, but Saturn, ruler of the atomic plane, and along with the Sun, and Leo, ruler of the 5th degree, and Uranus, the ruler of the logoic plane, but along with Vulcan, veiled by the Sun, connected with the 7th degree, I suppose. Freedom from all the 7 planes of our planetary existence. The planes which are sometimes referred to as the planes of human and superhuman evolution, all 7. Human evolution relating to the first and lowest 3 planes, and beyond that, the higher 4 planes are related to superhuman evolution. You will have noted that lately I have been emphasizing an aspect of initiation hitherto little emphasized, the aspect of freedom. Maybe this is not only in the discussion of the 2nd degree, but all the way through. And, we transcend the confinements of consciousness. Confinements. There we go. So, the path of initiation has at times been called the path of liberation. And it is to this essential aspect of the initiatory process that I am seeking to call your attention. I have pointed out continuously that initiation is not really the curious mixture of self-satisfied attainment. He nails it, doesn't he? Ceremonial and hierarchical recognition is portrayed by the major occult groups. I think I particularly like this self-satisfied attainment one. The kind of thing. Well, when you are an initiate of my standing, you will know what I know now. But the real thing is something other. It is far more a process of excessively hard work, during which process the initiate becomes what he is. And we might say this could be considered ultimately the monad in expression, conscious expression. This may entail hierarchical recognition, but not in the form usually pictured. The initiate finds himself in the company of those who have preceded him, and he is not rejected, as otherwise he would be due to vibratory discordance, but is seen and noted and then put to work. It was a bit like, coming to the arcane school. I don't know, for me, it was kind of a climax of my spiritual studies up to that time, but everyone was working so hard, so hi, welcome, and let's get to work. That's the way it was. And I benefited from that attitude. It is also a graded series of liberations resulting in the attainment of increased freedom from that which lies behind in his experience. So it's a venture into the new. And this carries with it the permission, soul enjoined or given, to proceed further on the way. Well, the way is sometimes called the way of higher evolution, but even, we might say, even the way of initiation is part of the way, not only the way of higher evolution. These freedoms are the result of detachment, dispassion, and discrimination. Here he's using detachment maybe in a more physical sense. What I've sometimes done is use discipline for the physical, dispassion for the emotional, discrimination for the mental, decentralization for the personal, and detachment, the overall attitude, the relation of the conscious soul to its personality. At the same time, discipline enforces and makes possible the hard work required to pass the grade. All these four techniques, for that is what they are preceded by a series of disillusionments, which, when realized and comprehended, leave the aspirant no choice but to move forward into greater light. The old and adhered to fails to satisfy the spiritual longing, and it must be relinquished in favor of greater freedom within a new energy field, this requiring much work to enter. I would like to have you study initiation from the angle of liberation, looking upon it as a process of strenuously attained freedoms. We're just not so much the victim of the energies and forces which have previously controlled our expression, not so much the victim. Energies and forces which have previously controlled our expression. I mean, every time we resist getting emotionally upset about something which used to seem or would normally seem emotionally upsetting, and every time we are able to think about it constructively rather than flying off the handle, it's a step. The basic aspect of initiation, when realized by the initiate, ties his experience into a firm relation with that of the whole of humanity, whose fundamental struggle is the attainment of that freedom, quote, whereby the soul and its powers can unfold and all men be free because of an individually attained freedom. Freedom. This is DK's emphasis here. It's very much a Uranian thing. It starts out at the first degree with Uranus. At the third degree, Uranus is again active, I think. But really, maybe at all the initiations, because, well, let's see. How can we put it? RPNs, rings past not, are broken. One initiation after another, and a greater freedom is thereby attained. But of course, it requires so much attention, so much real focus and discipline. So he's going to offer us a wonderful list here that I often go to. If you will study the 9 initiations and look upon them from this angle, you will see how each does most definitely mark a point of attainment, and therefore, the entire subject of initiation takes on a new beauty and appears more worthy of the pain and struggle of attainment. So a point of attainment, and this is going to be in terms of freedom, right? In terms of freedom. So let me give you an indication, no more than that, of what I mean. Initiation 1, birth. Freedom from the control of the physical body and its appetites. And there is a Uranian etheric emphasis. The etheric body receives many kinds of energies, and they can become stronger than the elemental physical nature. Initiation 2, we're working on it now, the baptism of freedom from the control of the emotional nature and the selfish sensitivity of the lower self. So we have both Mars and Neptune, the sensitivity corresponding with Neptune, the selfishness very much with Mars. We can stand back, always a standing back is necessary. I suppose we could use any one of these. There's quite a seed thought. By the way, I've gone on now for about an hour and 1 minute. I think I'll try if I can. I don't know if I can, but to make this a 2-hour program. Freedom from the control of the emotional nature and the selfish sensitivity of the lower self. A larger picture is understood, and from a gradual illumining perspective. Then, okay, well, this is a great list. Baptism, transfiguration, freedom from the ancient authority of the threefold personality, marking a climaxing moment in the history of all initiates. It doesn't mean, of course, that that there will not be recrudescences or the re-arising of old tendencies, but they are not allowed to sway. They are under control. So the big question, who or what is in charge here? Do I behave as if my personality is in charge, or is something more spiritually fundamental within me in charge? And, supposedly it would be the soul-infused focus, which is in charge, and the man would be able to focus within his egoic lotus at will, and in the presence of his accumulated virtue. Initiation 4, renunciation, great renunciation that it's called in human terms anyway, freedom from all self-interest and the renouncing of the personal life in the interest of the larger whole. That's another really great way of saying it, when there is a causal body or an egoic lotus, there is still necessarily self-interest. It's hard to understand, but there's a very subtle form of selfishness that can go accompany the factor of egoic accumulation. Even soul consciousness ceases to be of importance and a more universal awareness, and one closer to the divine mind, takes its place. A more universal awareness and one closer to the divine mind. The divine mind, let's get one there, DVM, and divine mind. Whoop. Got a little problem there. Takes its place. So the atmic plane is one of the lower outposts of the divine mind. We're not quite there yet. It'll take the 5th degree for us to be there. Freedom from all self-interest and the renouncing of the personal life in the interest of the larger whole. So for this 4th initiation, one must think in very broad terms. Think in very broad terms. And beyond, certainly beyond the personal self, and even beyond the individual self of accumulated virtue, brought out in the quarries of lower life, individual self of accumulated virtue, brought out in the quarries of lower life. Quarries, how do you spell that? How do you spell that? 2 R's. Even soul consciousness ceases to be of importance, and a more universal awareness of one closer to the divine mind takes its place. Well, initiation 5, the great revelation, freedom from blindness, a liberation which enables the initiate to see a new vision, and that new vision is of the 7 or 9 paths on the way of higher evolution. I think earlier we discussed the other possible visions of the purpose. Also a greater vision of the divine purpose of the planetary logos. This vision concerns the reality lying beyond any hitherto sensed or known. Well, you know, even at the 4th degree, a vision of the meaning of the absolute comes in. It did with HPB and also with Krishnamurti. Oop, that's Kamamanis. Krishnamurti. They called him K. You know, I was just recently staying for a few days at his retreat in Ojai, which I think he bought in the early 20s. They've preserved it. It's marvelous. Maybe it's not quite as expensive as other places in Ojai, and it still has that aura about it. It's nothing fancy. And the rooms are named after spiritual people, theosophical types. I think Tui and I stayed in the Annie Besant room. And there are others. I think there's this Stravinsky room. I mean, you know, great artists and others came there and lent their aura to the place. Also, pictures of Krishnamurti in the old days. He was a good-looking man, you know, young when he was young, and in the 20s and 30s and so forth, and older when he was older. I think he lived to be, was it 90 years old? Something like that. And they continue his tradition there, and it's a marvelous place. Well, there are some other types of freedom. the great decision. It's a Libran third ray kind of initiation, freedom of choice, of the, obviously, of the 7 or 9 or now 9 paths on the way of higher evolution. Path 8 and path 9 are not discussed or revealed. So he's dealt with these choices in an earlier part of the book, and we understand that, what is it, that true mental polarization, he discusses that, how it comes in between the second and third. And when he's dealing with the sixth initiation, he deals with that. There's only one true path that a deciding initiate can take. And is that the path by which he descended? And of course, when you really look at monadic descent, it's a very abstruse issue. What were we as a monad when the universal logos, any universal logos first emerged? We always remain the universal logos, and we always remain every emanation, but somehow more specifically, emanations get separated from each other, apparently separated, and experience a kind of, eventually kind of unconsciousness, and then a kind of individuality, the limitations of individuality, and eventually rising a kind of group consciousness, and eventually rising a growing universal consciousness, until the emanation becomes in full consciousness the universal logos, which it has always been. I think emanation is the most mysterious factor in the dynamics of the universe. You look at some of the Buddhist paintings and tankas and so forth, and I realize that I've been trained in early days as a Buddhist, and somehow emanation theory is just inherent within me. Maybe the Gnostics got it as well from the East. It just seems to me the only way to explain how things really proceed from universality into individuality, into limitation, and back again without ever having relinquished universality. There are many mysteries which I don't think can be explained by the mind. The mind will only indicate, but it must be the experience itself which reveals to us the nature of what's really going on. Now comes the true resurrection. Now it's initiation 7. Often that resurrection, is considered to be what proceeds after the 4th initiation on the way to the 5th. Jesus rose from the tomb, and maybe by some occult atomic process, as the Shroud of Turin seems to indicate, and that is a resurrection of the body, which was then demonstrated following the crucifixion in various contacts with the disciples, although the Christ had to have been there, because he spoke as the Christ. And you kind of wonder whether that type of resurrection of Jesus could have even occurred without the intervention of the Christ or the supervision. All of these mysterious factors will be revealed to us. We have to determine what are the most important things as we study this amazing material. There are many tidbits and occult nuggets of knowledge and even of wisdom which it is possible to apprehend, but it's, we can get lost in the trees and not see the forest. So, people like myself, we have to curtail our love of detail, in the search for the wider, greater picture. so we see the forest, despite all those trees. Resurrection, freedom from the hold of the phenomenal life of the seven planes of our planetary life. It's a reality of lifting out of or above the cosmic physical plane. So basically, not just confinement on the cosmic physical plane, but an ability to what? Go to the cosmic astral plane, apparently. Well, the way I've looked at this, does the fifth initiation admit to the monad? Well, it certainly admits to greater contact with the monad. Does the sixth initiation admit to the logoic plane? Well, certainly greater contact with the logoic plane. And I've always thought of it as the seventh initiation admitting to still greater contact with the cosmic astral plane. But this seems to say that there is an abstraction possible from the logoic plane of the cosmic physical plane. And I suppose that abstraction would lead to the cosmic astral plane, or from a perspective which is seen and understood from the cosmic astral plane. And if you think about it, a number of the paths lead to the cosmic astral plane. The second path, oh gosh, I always forget the name. Well, you look it up, it's there, where our various astral planes are straightened out. Well, I can't let that stand. I have to get it right. So, what do we have here? We have the cosmic Buddhic plane. Yeah, okay, so magnetic work. Why do I forget that? Path of magnetic work leading to the cosmic astral plane, but it's taken us here to path to Sirius, cosmic astral plane, and all the others either to the cosmic mental or cosmic Buddhic plane, path of Earth service to the cosmic astral plane, but eventually to the cosmic Buddhic plane, because those on the path of Earth service fight their way onto the path of the solar logoi. So, at the sixth degree, we learn where we can go and make a decision that way. And it's certainly possible that we spend some time on sacred planets as some of the higher initiations are taken and as we prepare to launch into the cosmic astral plane, even on the way to the cosmic mental plane. So is it so that at the seventh initiation seems to say so, we can lift up above the cosmic physical plane in our perspective, and it's not only a question of what remaining on the logoic aspect in the sea of fire. So it's a little bit different there, isn't it? We take the third initiation, we are not yet focused on the Buddhic plane, but we are successfully appropriating the Buddhic energy. And when we take the fourth initiation, we begin to successfully appropriate the atmic energy without being focused on it. But here, at the seventh degree in the cosmic, on the cosmic physical plane, we seem to be lifting out of or above. Now, there's no place to go when we think of out of or above except the cosmic astral plane. So I've looked at this in a couple of different ways. I've said that maybe the eighth initiation is necessary before one can come and go at will to the cosmic astral plane. But maybe even in the seventh, one can lift out of and above, or maybe see with some kind of objectivity life on the seven planes and not be subject to the life on the seven planes of the cosmic physical plane. Well, as I say, these are words way beyond us, because it is the objective of the Christ at the moment to complete this seventh initiation. Initiation 8. Now, if Christ and the Buddha are still seventh degree initiates, what can we know of beings who are initiation 8 or 9? Freedom from the reaction of consciousness, as that word is understood by you, and I would say in relation to the cosmic physical plane, and the liberation into a state of awareness, a form of conscious recognition which has no relation to consciousness as you understand the term. It sounds like the Tibetan is understanding something here, even though he says he has not been in that way to the cosmic astral plane. It might be regarded as a complete freedom from sensitivity, yet with a full flowering of that quality to which we give the inadequate name compassion. More I cannot say. I'm sure you know the Buddha, no, Buddha will be working on this. He had great compassion. And we're not told what his path will be, but we are told that the path of earth service was not to be his path. And it's also mentioned that the path to Sirius was to be his, but maybe he won't tread that path at this time. Well, you know, about sensitivity, one cannot imagine, or I cannot, the cosmic astral plane under Neptune as devoid of sensitivity. And as the cosmic astral plane is the plane through which, or to which all must pass, to which and through which all must pass, following their freedom from the cosmic physical plane, then what is the sensitivity which they have? Maybe it's freedom from what we call sensitivity relating to form. And I might put down here that sensitivity relates to form. And yet the full flowering of compassion, it's number 8, it's the Buddha, it's being above and below at the same time. Well, you know, this is a real ponder on this. Of course, it's probably not the immediate necessity that we understand this one. But consciousness, something more, you know, you've got to say that something we call identification must be at work, which is beyond consciousness as we usually understand it. And then initiation 9, it's always, you know, freedom. The whole thing is about freedom, beyond curtailment, beyond limitation, or beyond the previous limitations. Freedom from all possible forms of enticement, particularly with reference to the higher planes. Okay. It must constantly be remembered, and hence my constant reiteration, that our 7 planes are the 7 subplanes of the cosmic physical plane. So even with regard to, I just have to have that, with regard to, okay. So even with regard the higher subplanes of the cosmic physical plane, the initiate of the 7th initiate of the 7th or 8th degree can have relation or contact, and supposedly would be subject still to enticement, but nothing can lure the 9th degree initiate back onto the cosmic physical plane unless later service. Now you kind of wonder, you have the solar angels who went to Sirius as initiates of what degree? You know, what degrees are taken by these beings as they go on to other constellational systems like Sirius, sometimes called a constellation. Do they necessarily take the 9th degree? If they take the 9th degree, what brings them back to the cosmic physical plane except the will to serve? Or do they go forth and remain as initiates of the 7th degree or 8th degree, not taking the refusal? Well, we're not understanding that. Certainly the return of the solar angels is not about enticement. It's about service to the planetary logos to whom they are related. So, that whole question of what degree do you have to be to travel on the way of higher evolution? So I'm going to just put that down as there is a question. Does one have to be of the 9th degree in order to travel on the way of higher evolution? Or can one remain of a lower degree and come back into contact with the cosmic physical plane later in terms of service? But even an initiate of the 9th degree could return to the cosmic physical plane for purposes of service. Oh, these are questions beyond our ken, but they arise as we consider. Maybe, I don't know if it's occurred to me before, but what degree do you have to be to travel out of our solar system? I mean, for instance, if we leave the Earth and take maybe an 8th degree on a sacred planet, or 9th degree, do you have to be a 9th degree initiate to travel away from our solar system altogether? And if that were true, what would it say about the solar angels who have returned? Well, these are questions which arise as one contemplates what is given. The goal of freedom is in reality the main incentive to tread the path of return. This goal of freedom, path of return to what? Return to our consciously to our original identity. One of the most spiritually exciting things taking place in the world today is the use in every country of the word freedom. So feared by so many of an authoritarian nature. It was that great disciple FD Roosevelt who anchored the word in a new and more universal sense. It now has a fuller and deeper meaning to humanity. Was he an initiate of the 3rd degree? Or certainly 2nd, but maybe the 3rd degree. Certainly he was one through whom Master Moria could work as he continually attempts to inspire great states and okay, well, we've had quite a bit offered in this discussion of the 2nd degree, and there's been an enlargement upon the concept of freedom, a very great enlargement, and to consider every initiation from the perspective of freedom from a sphere of limitation. So just think about your own life and what type of freedom is lacking now, and what type of freedom must be gained next, indicating the initiation for which you have to prepare. Well, okay, let's go ahead. We won't finish this at this time. Initiation 3. No, we can't possibly finish, but unless I extend this, there's already an hour and a half into it, unless I extend it to 3 hours, and I'm not sure I have the stamina tonight to do that. There's no need for me to enter into the symbolic details anent this initiation. The whole theme is adequately dealt with in a book written by AAB entitled From Bethlehem to Calvary, a book to which I gave my approval and endorsement as presenting the subject of the 5 initiations in a form suitable to the Christian West. And let's just say, still, this book will be useful as members of the Christian faith look for a broader explanation of reality and the Christ's real role. I would like to recall to you the fact that this third initiation is in reality the first of the major initiations and is so regarded by the emanating source of our planetary logos, Sanat Kumara, and in the 2 great planetary centers, Shambhala and Hierarchy. Well, this is often repeated. As I've sometimes said, whether an initiation is major or minor depends on the context. Sometimes we discuss really lesser initiations which precede the 5 monastic initiations, and then even initiation 1 and 2 are called major. But when we deal only with the 5 initiations, then only from the 3rd initiation on is the term major used, and otherwise initiations of the threshold is the term applied to the 1st and 2nd initiation. I refer to that stupendous source of our planetary life. Amazing. The sun Sirius, into the lodge of divine beings who work from this heavenly center. Oh my goodness, look what he's just said. The stupendous source of our planetary life. In a way, one thought the sun was that. But he tells us that even in a deeper way, now we know there is a deep relationship between Sirius and our little planet, but to call it the source of our entire planetary life, I mean, we knew it was the source of the initiatory regime on our planet, and maybe throughout our solar system, but the source, with a capital S, of our entire planetary life. What mystery is concealed thereby? Just the way Sirius follows the great Orion, the hunter, you kind of wonder if our little Earth isn't following Sirius in some analogous manner. Well, initiation is very important on our planet, and on some other planets. I think Venus was one on which it was very successful, maybe another as well. And Sirius seems to be behind this. In the sunshine of the major sun, there is no evil, not as we understand evil. So it represents a great type of attainment, even for our solar logos, who has not achieved yet the capacity of a sacred solar logos, although to us very sacred. The first 2 initiations, regarded simply as initiations of the threshold, are experiences which have prepared the body of the initiate for the reception of the terrific voltage of the 3rd initiation. He speaks in electrical terms, and remember that although the mysteries are presented in many ways, Masonic, religious, academic, etc., there is a kind of electrical scientific key on the 5th ray to the mysteries of initiation and to the mysteries as a whole. So here's this term, voltage. This voltage is passed through the body of the initiate under the direction of the planetary logos, before whom the initiate stands for the first time. But, you know, in a way, Here, Sanat Kumara is being called the Planetary Logos. The initiator at the 7th degree is, for the first time, the Planetary Logos, and not Sanat Kumara per se. Yet, it is interesting to see that Sanat Kumara is somehow really the Planetary Logos in extension, or in, what can we call it, emanative extension. So Sanat Kumara is considered the Planetary Logos at this point. I mean, DK switches around his attributions so many times that you wonder whether Sanat Kumara is the Planetary Logos. You see the soul-infused personality of the Planetary Logos. Is he the personality of the Planetary Logos? Is he in any way an independent being? I wonder if there are any such things as independent beings. I think all beings, though apparently individual or distinct, are really emanations. And when it comes to resolving a being into its origin, you're always going to get a greater being, and the so-called separateness of the being you're trying to resolve will not stand. Well, I failed to press my chronometer. There I go again. The rod of initiation is used as the transferring agent. The second initiation freed the initiate. See, it's always this question of what kind of freedom are you gaining? The second initiation freed the initiate from the astral level of consciousness, the astral plane, the plane of glamour, illusion, and distortion. This was an essential experience because the initiate standing before the one initiator for the first time, and at the third initiation, must be freed from any attractive pull from the personality. But then I would have to say, what about the mind? Is that not of the personality, or is it not considered so in this context? So, but definitely the astral body is considered part of the personality, and sometimes part of the lower or irrational part of the personality. So let's just say the etheric, physical, and astral bodies are considered part of the personality, and really the irrational part of the personality. Okay. So, the mechanism of the personality must be so purified and so insensitive to the material attractions of the three worlds that there is henceforth nothing in the initiate which could offset the divine initiatory activity. And all of this is about, this is where people really overestimate themselves, attracted by nothing in the three worlds, material attractions, and everything is material in a way. The astral field is material, the etheric physical field is material, even the lower mental field is material. So in a way, the mind has to be transcended here, the mind in its lower capacity. The physical appetites are subdued and relegated to their rightful place. The desired nature is controlled and purified. The mind is responsive primarily to ideas, intuitions, and impulses coming from the soul, and begins its true task as an interpreter of divine truth and transmitter of ashramic intention. Well, the mind is still of the personality, but now the mind has a higher use, which is soul aligned. Yes. Okay. You will note, therefore, how this third initiation is a climaxing point Yes, we've been warned not to consider climaxing the main factor, but the opening up of new possibilities. Climaxing point and also inaugurates a new cycle of activity leading to the seventh initiation of resurrection. And why is this? Why is this? And we might say the third initiation, I'll put it down, is the first solar initiation. And then counting 5, we come to the 7th. I would call your attention to the fact that the 3rd, 5th, and 7th initiations come under the control of the 5th, 1st, and 7th rays. Not exclusively. I mean, there are other affiliated rays, but these are the main ones. The main connections. The 5th ray has to be related to the 5th initiation, and, he talks about the logos, the 5th logos relating to the 5th initiation. He does that in the treatise on cosmic fire, or does he say the 3rd logos? 3rd logos. Let's see. Go here to treatise on cosmic fire, and 3rd logos, 5th. So let's see what that is all about. Here it is. The blending power of the 3rd logos is felt at the 5th initiation. Well, these are, we know that the third logos also rules the 6th initiation, and the 2nd logos has something to do with the 7th initiation. Here we have the 2nd logos at the 6th and not the 3rd. So there are different logoi, or maybe ray lords transmitting the power of various logoi, which are involved in the initiation, not exclusively the ones given, but mainly the ones given. So the 3rd, 5th, and 7th are under these rays, but we just saw on page, check out Cosmic Fire, but, whoa, okay, do check out Cosmic Fire, page 433, and see other logoi associated with the various initiations. The only one that is identical with what's being said here is the 5th logos relating to the 3rd initiation. These, as you might expect, will constitute the emanating energies transmitted through the application of the rod of initiation. What an amazing instrument or talisman this rod of initiation must be. So with respect to initiation 3, the 5th ray of science, and what do we have on page 340? We have science and direction. But let's look at this again. The rays and initiations. That's page 340. And integration, direction, and science. Okay. Well, the lighted way of integration does lead to the 3rd initiation. Of course, those taking that particular degree in the arcane school, it's more an anticipation, more a warm-up for that which is coming. The 5th ray is involved here, definitely. So the inflowing energy produces its major effect upon the mind or upon Manus, the 5th principle. It enables the initiate to use the mind as its major instrument in the work to be done prior to passing through the 4th and 5th initiations. The mind becomes the focus prior to the 4th and fifth initiations. So in what way? Illusion of separation is on its way to ending. There is that inclusiveness and wholeness appreciated at this point. And, you know, normally you would think of the fifth ray as being so discriminative, but if you look carefully at the names of the fifth ray Lord, you'll see how much love there is, how much connection with Venus there is. All of that is found in Esoteric Psychology Volume 1, you know, somewhere in the 60s and 70s, maybe 80s in there. So the fifth initiation, the first ray of willpower, not only that ray, but certainly it's very important. Think about Leo, fifth sign, bringing in both the first ray and the fifth ray and the will to illumine, and this illumination related to the great revelation of divine purpose and the revelation of the way ahead and the greater understanding of the nature of the possible paths to be trodden. The first ray of willpower. At this initiation, the disciple appreciates for the first time the significance of the will and uses it to relate the head center and the center at the base of the spine. Let's just say this is the point at which these two centers are really related, thus completing the integration started at the third initiation. So also think of the fifth degree in terms of integration. Completed. It's almost as if what is inaugurated below is completed two initiations above point of inauguration. And then the seventh initiation, the second ray of love wisdom, is here active. You know, it's got to be very solar logoic in its not only the major planetary ray, but the major solar ray. So it is a kind of transfiguration. It is a transfiguration in the solar sense. The application of the rod of initiation by the initiator working this time from the highest plane, the logoic plane, and let's just say, and it is the planetary logos, just as a mysterious existence was the initiator at the sixth initiation. So it's the planetary logos working from the logoic plane, produces in a mysterious way an effect on the totality of humanity, you know. So the initiation of such a high being is really a planetary event, and to a lesser extent upon allied kingdoms. So it's higher up the hierarchy, we might say. The effect is similar to that produced in the individual at the fifth initiation, wherein the head center and the center at the base of the spine become closely en rapport through the use of the will. But the effect is on all of humanity. So the logoic is involved, the logoic plane, the sea of fire, sea of fire, and the planetary logos in his fullness, and not just as an emanation, namely Sanat Kumara, although as we have seen, sometimes Sanat Kumara is called the planetary logos. Aspirants and disciples should remember that after the third initiation, the effect of the initiation which they may be undergoing are not confined simply to the individual initiate, but that henceforth, at all the later initiations, he becomes the transmitter of energy which will pour through him with increased potency at each application of the rod. So, you might say that humanity as a whole is the beneficiary of initiations after the third, and that such initiations are planetary events. Very rare now, these planetary events, but coming into increased presence. We're told that a number, quite a few initiates of the fifth degree will be required. It doesn't mean that humanity is taking this initiation, but many initiates of the fifth degree will be required when moving Sanat Kumara's plan forward. He acts primarily as an agent for the transmission, for the stepping down, and for consequent, it's all electrical terms, consequent safe distribution of energy to the masses. Shambhala exquisitely measures its application of energy, the power which touches and withdraws. And if you touch too long, it's like, putting your finger in the socket, or at least for the recipient. Usually it's the one who puts the finger in the socket that experiences the jolt. But in this case, if Shambhala did not wisely co-measure the strength and duration of its applied energy, it would be the recipient that would measure the jolt or experience the jolt in a destructive manner. So this is the science of occultism. And everything must be mathematically co-measured. Otherwise, there will be destruction instead of construction according to the plan. Each time a disciple achieves an initiation that stands before the initiator, he becomes simply an instrument whereby the planetary logos can reach humanity and bring fresh life and energy, maybe even in some of the earlier initiations. The work done prior to and at the third initiation is purely preparatory to this type of service required from an energy transmitter. So we might say more so after the third degree. And that is why at the seventh initiation, the dominating ray of our planet and of our solar logos, the second ray of love wisdom is employed, reaching out inclusively to all humanity. There is no energy upon our planet of equal potency, this being the sole ray at this time of our planetary logos, and no expression of it so pure and constructive. No expression of it has so pure and constructive a quality as that to which the initiate is subjected at the seventh initiation. Something about here, 1943, the Christ's initiation in Gemini as part of the seventh initiation, and also that highest quality of love transmitted at that point. This seventh initiatory climax marks another culminating point in the career of the initiate and indicates his entrance into an entirely different cycle of experience. And, the Christ and the Buddha have this ahead, this completion ahead of them they are supposed to, at some unspecified time, but one thinks more towards the end of the Aquarian age, pass before the initiator, who I guess has to be the planetary logos. Sometimes it's called Sanat Kumara, but they pass before the initiator because it's given in Initiation Human and Solar that the planetary logos himself is the initiator at the 7th degree, and then pass on to service of a nature unknown, unrealized by us. Of course, on the way of higher evolution, the Buddha stayed with the path of Earth service and still seems to be involved with it, even though it was not his path, and the Christ is certainly on the path of Earth service, but the Christ will take the Ray path for a while, eventually, we are told, going to Sirius. And in relation to the Buddha, Sirius was to have been his path, but apparently is not now. All these are high things, and they concern the movements of the hierarchy itself. They're of interest to us, a bit like a cult gossip. Oh, what's so-and-so really going to do once he reaches these points, when we haven't any idea of what may lie immediately ahead of us. You will have noted, if you are comparing these instructions with the outline given by me on page 340, where all the 9 initiations and their 3 keynotes are given, that in this 3rd initiation is the ajna center, the center between the eyebrows, which is stimulated. That center has so much to do initially with the 5th ray. And this is a 5th ray initiation. This is a fact of great interest because it is at this initiation that the disciple begins consciously and creatively to direct energies being made available to him, and to do so by the Ajna Center and directed towards humanity as a whole. This is important. The directorial nature, the activation of the directorial nature of the Ajna Center. Directorial, perhaps. Direct. Oh, I see we have an E missing. Directorial nature of the Ajna Center. So, the Ajna Center before that is involved with the integration of the personality, even in a selfish way. But as far as the true directing agency is concerned, it is not active until the 3rd degree. So what are these energies which are being directed? Goodness, 4 of them. Center of direction. Well, maybe this is the time to spare this particular subject until later. I mean, I could try for a 3-hour program, but then this would drive the transcriber who has so graciously volunteered to put my words into text form and the video into text form crazy if the programs are too long. Sometimes I used to do 5-hour programs. This was just an expediency for myself, as I did not have to break in the flow of presentation. I did not have to break and spend an hour converting and sending. I could just spend 5 hours converting and later sending when I was not at the computer. But it made for other types of problems. I hope, I do hope, this is a bit like a study group. I'm studying this with you. And you can stop at any point, and you can stop for comment if you use this with your groups. Or if you use it for yourself, you can think over what I might have said. And of course, primarily, you think over what the Tibetan has said. But this is just one person's take on these things, which may be correct, incorrect, but hopefully is at least stimulating forethought. So let's just say that this is the end of Raise and Initiation webinar commentary number 94. Oh, page 690. And what is the day? The day is the 24th of July, 2016. Page 690 is where we are. And let's see. I always end up having to go back here, which is a little tedious, I know. I wouldn't blame you for shutting me off here. 681 to 690. And yeah. And we'll get into these energies that are transmitted by the Ashton Center. That'll be our next process. So 681. And we'll get into number 95. Beginning of Raise and Initiation webinar commentary number 95. Don't know what day it'll be. Maybe later tonight. I don't know. And we'll begin with page 690. So, and become aware thereby of some energies which we, as we approach mental focus and even mental polarization, can begin to direct through our action center. So, friends, that's it for the moment. Hopefully, we'll all get something out of this. I'm so grateful for the privilege of being able to review very carefully. Well, you can always be more careful, but to review very carefully what the Tibetan has specifically said. He always says, read more carefully. So basically, being the second-ray type on the third sub-ray, you might say, I'm going step by step, word by word, sentence by sentence, paragraph by paragraph, detail by detail, the ray of detailed unity, the ray of meticulous entirety, trying to present useful perspectives on what the Tibetan has said. Of course, you'll have your own. Naturally, what I say is not as important as what you determine for yourself. Okay, so that's it there, and we'll see you for number 95 whenever that comes about. Lots of love, take care, study hard, apply. I'm talking to myself as I talk to you. All the best. Bye-bye.